That this week's episode is brought to you by Marco's Pizza. Monday and Tuesday nights are Carroll U nights at Marco's Pizza in Waukesha. Mention you're a Carroll student and receive 25% off your entire online or delivery order. Marco's Pizza, every store, every day, the Italian way. Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of the See You in Van Mail podcast. Once again, my name is Sam Gobert. I'm our sports information director here. Joining us today, we have our brand new head women's bowling coach, the first of our program history, Courtney Ermisch. Courtney, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Courtney, why don't you just start by introducing yourself a little bit? Tell us a little bit about where you're from, where was the last place that you came from, and throw in your favorite TV show too.
I'm from Big Bend, Wisconsin, and I was recently just coaching at Judson University in Elgin, Illinois, but I competed college bowling at Robert Morris University in Chicago, Illinois. And my favorite TV show would probably have to be The Masked Singer right now.
Oh, really? I've seen everybody talk about it, and that's just something I haven't watched yet. So
yeah, it's really good. I don't know anybody. I can never figure out who it is, but it's fun to see and try and guess. But yeah,
I like Ken Jeong a lot, so I feel like one of these times
super funny on it. The panel is really funny, and they make it like entertaining, so it makes it better.
Good. I think it's on Hulu. I think I'll watch that at some point.
Yeah, should.
Cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into bowling? I know, for many schools, I don't know, is in the Midwest, has it been a big high school sport?
Yeah, so I started when I was pretty young. My whole family has done it.
Okay.
I can't name really a person in my family that doesn't bowl. So that's kind of how it started. And then, Midwest is definitely one of the bigger bowling hubs for high school bowling. Because I know now, even when I was in college, a lot of people didn't even bowl high school. They don't have high school bowling. But Wisconsin is pretty big for high school bowling. So that kind of helped pursue the sport, I would say, rather than just kind of doing it for fun. I guess that's kind of when I realized that I wanted to do a little bit more competitively.
Good. So how did, what about bowling separated you from other high school sports too? Did you compete in other high school sports?
Yeah, so I competed in softball, I did bowling, and then I did club volleyball as well. And I don't really know what kind of set it apart because I did them all until I was a senior. I continued softball, I continued bowling, I was doing club, I quit a little earlier than that. I think it was sophomore year I stopped doing that. But I think I just kind of loved that sport, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do for college up until middle of junior year. I decided really late to do bowling. I was kind of looking between softball and bowling for a while, and just the opportunities I had in bowling, there was more opportunities in bowling, I thought, than there was if I went to college for softball.
Gotcha. So at what point did you decide that, you said Robert Morris, correct?
Yeah.
When did you decide that, Robert Morris bowling was right for you, moving from the Fox Valley area all the way down to Chicago?
Yeah. Very late. I decided very late. I think it was May of my senior year. And I was looking at schools. I looked in Iowa. I was looking in Wisconsin. I was looking, there's some south. But I just remember one day I was driving down in the city and I was a little nervous about if I could do the city thing. And me and my mom, I'll never forget it. We had made a left turn onto Lakeshore Drive. Yeah. And I looked at my mom and I said, this is where I want to go. And then that's kind of what did. Obviously, there was the bowling part of it, with what I was going to get out of it, and knowing that school could give me a chance to win a national title and stuff like that. but it was more of like making the move. But then one day it just clicked that I would be okay with living in the city and that I really wanted to. And I'm glad I did because it was a nice experience.
Good. Yeah. And you just mentioned you won a national title down there. Do you want to touch on that at all? Like, how did that feel winning a national? Not many people can say in any sport that they win national titles.
Yeah, I actually won two down there. I won one as a freshman and then one as a senior. Um, and it's crazy to think that like a year later, it still hasn't fully set in because I don't think it's one of those things I don't think really fully ever does
Yeah.
because you can't really explain that moment. Um, there's no words to describe a moment like that. But it was definitely something that I am glad, like, I don't want to say glad I got to experience because I know not a lot of people get to. Um, but it's definitely a moment where it makes you think that was the right choice or that my hard work had finally paid off. All of my team's hard work had finally paid off. So I think that's something that's kind of surreal because you can't, like you said, not everyone gets to experience it. And it's still crazy to think that, like, on a team, there's only 8 bowlers. So 8 bowlers in that year got to experience that. So it is kind of crazy to think that, but like that's why you can't really describe it because there
Mhm.
is no words to describe that feeling, I guess.
Yeah. That's what a lot of people say too. Like at
Yeah.
any sport level, it's like it's so surreal just being in the moment and being at the
Yeah,
top.
and you forget like, and that's like the thing too is it's such like a like I don't remember a lot of it just because you're so caught up in the moment and then looking back it's like, oh yeah, that happened just because you're so caught up in the moment. So
Yeah, totally. So, what experiences being a collegiate bowler? Obviously, for a lot of sports, being a college athlete transitions well into those who want to move on to a coaching role. But what things did you learn as a collegiate bowler that led you into learning you wanted to be a coach?
I've always wanted to be a coach. I just think that's like the atmosphere I had. I mean, like the schooling I went for was that part of it was being a coach. Um, but I think like the biggest thing that for like me being like an athlete to a coach is I wanted to give back to the sport.
Okay.
It's a sport that has taken me so far, and it's a sport that not a lot of people really, know about. So I think I want it as a coach, I have that better opportunity to give back to the sport and learn, give the knowledge that I've learned in my 4 years of college to now new bowlers because again, to think being in it, I have that experience of what it takes to be a college bowler. So I think that's also what I wanted to do is me being someone that has gone through it. I can give that knowledge because not everybody has gone through that. Especially lately, it's a lot different than when it was college bowling back in the day. It's always changing. So I think me being so fresh out of it, being able to give that experience to people now to hopefully help them.
Good. Yeah, I kind of relate to that too, being like young in my profession, like compared to
Right.
relative to other people. Like I feel like I'm able to I work closely with like athletes a little bit better because I can understand like where they're coming from. Like if they're
Right.
too busy to do an interview because they have homework, I'm like, yeah, I get that. I was there
Right.
like a couple of years ago. Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you talked about giving back to the sport and, you know, moving forward. Well, now you're starting a brand new program here at Carroll that we just announced this year. What are some of your thoughts and feelings on starting a new program?
Um, there's a lot of excitement and also a lot of fear, to be honest,
Yeah.
because it it they're almost like contradicting of why it's exciting to like be able to start it and do whatever and it's your own. I mean, it's everything I make that is, like I do all of it. I bring in the bowlers and I start that, but at the same time, that's the fear too because it's all on me. Um, so it is nice to be able to kind of build it from the ground up. You're not really like someone had already brought in this and you have to like go and go with those people or go off of that. You get to start brand new. I get to start how I would run a program or do whatever. So that's nice, but at the same time, that I was also fearful that I have to create ways that are good and like, bring in bowlers and do all that. So I would think it's super exciting, but it's also obviously nerve-wracking, as I would think any coach starting a program would probably say. That's not all fun and games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, just for anybody starting, like even I know we have a new head football coach. This is his first year as a head coach, and there's still a lot of nerves that come along with it, even though you've been around the sport for a while and our program has been secured for over 100 years. But just starting your own new thing is a challenge in itself.
Right.
What's like one thing that you think that um, you're going to be really good at this year to start, and then maybe one thing that you think like I gotta probably work on that a little bit more as I progress in this role?
Um, that's a good question. Um, I think I'll be good at like we talked about with like the age is connecting with the girls, to kind of help them through. Just because with starting, there'll probably be a lot more of the younger, because obviously I'll be recruiting younger, like people out of high school. So I'll be able to be really good at with like helping them go from high school to college, um, and like help them with like the college bowling part. And maybe like what I'll have to probably not be as good at and need more guidance with is probably like more of the behind the scenes stuff, just because that's something that I've never had to deal with. With like the all the paperwork type stuff, I think that'll probably need a lot. I'll need a lot of like help, not so much help, but like asking a lot of questions in that background of it. But I think obviously over the years it'll become way easier. And once I do it once, but this year it'll be, and I know we'll all be learning together because Carroll's never had a bowling program. So it'll all be stuff that we're learning together. So
Yeah, it'll all be brand new. Well, that's good. You'll also have 15 to 20 head coaches that are already here that can help you through some
yeah,
of the stuff too.
yep.
Good. What do you think is going to be, for a freshman coming to a bowling team, especially a new bowling team, what's the biggest jump from high school bowling to college bowling? Like what type of edge do you have to have in order to be a collegiate bowler?
You definitely like the will and want to win. I think that's like the biggest thing. In high school, you may be like your best bowler on their team, and anything. In high school, maybe you bowl more for yourself, but in college, that's just not really the case anymore. You have to want to win because you don't everything, even when you bowl for yourself, you're bowling for your team. At the end of the day, your team is the one that gets like the trophy. So I think the will, like the want to win, and like it's a whole different atmosphere that you can't really prepare some like a freshman or anybody new to it for. Because when I walked into my first tournament, I was so overwhelmed. There's way more teams. There's people that are like super good, and it's just super like overwhelming at first. Um, but I think that's like the biggest change is just if you want to be there and you want to win, you can get better. And like the willingness to learn, you have to be like able to like want to learn the sport. But
Cool.
I think that's in any sport. I think it's all the same as you don't like that's what you look for in recruits is you want somebody that wants to win and wants to get better. If you
Mhm.
if you're not going to have that, you're not going to succeed. I think, but that's it. That's most sports. But I think just like the level is just better, but that's any sport as well. You go from high school to college. College is definitely just going to be a better level than high school was,
Right.
most of the time. So
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, well, I mean, that's still good to know for like a lot of people who have never. I guarantee there's people who are listening to this who have said, I've never watched college bowling. I've never watched any, even professional bowling that much. So like, it's good to know like what people should look for and what you all look for as coaches in a program. So
yeah.
cool. Um, so before this interview, admittedly, I was like, what kind of questions, do I ask like someone who's like a bowler or a bowling coach? And so I Googled to ask bowlers, and the first thing that popped up was like 25 of the most annoying question bowlers get all the time. Like stuff about like your ball's that heavy, or like what kind of oil do they use on the lanes? And so like, What is probably one of the most annoying questions you get as a bowler, if you can think of that?
So I was thinking about this, and obviously you get like the common ones, like everyone like asks like, well, what's your average? Like how many balls do you carry, this and that, and like those aren't like so much the annoying ones, but the annoying statement I get is the, oh, you bowl. Like it's just a shock to everybody. And it's like, oh, you bowl, and then it's like, I bowl in college, and there's like, what? There's college bowling? And I think it's just more of like yes, it is. It like I know not everyone considers it like a sport, but it really is. Like there's a lot of scholarship out there, and there's a lot more to the sport than you think. And then you have to go and explain it, and then they usually find it the coolest thing in the world.
Right.
That, oh my gosh, you're like a good bowler, like you did it in college, you're this, like then they find it the coolest thing, and then they want to ask all these like really interesting questions. But I think it's the initial, like when you say like, oh, you're athletic, what did you go to college for? And then you say bowling, and it's like the whole like, oh, bowling, that's a college sport. That
Right.
I think is probably one of the most annoying things. It's not so much a question, it's more the whole like, oh, you bowl, like that, what, like you can get scholarships on it, like that whole like, because then it turns into like a long conversation that you have to like explain it, and then they usually are like, oh my gosh, that's the coolest thing, I didn't know, I wish that was a thing when I wasn't, and then and I'm like, yeah, it is, it's become a lot bigger, and I do wish it was bigger longer, like I wish it wasn't, but
Yeah,
I
it's
think
more
that would
popular.
probably be
Yeah.
it.
Well, I can kind of, I'm assuming there's this huge stereotype around bowlers that when you think of bowling, you think of just people going to a bowling alley to play with their friends at like a birthday party. Or like you,
Yep.
you picture somebody like this big burly person as a bowler, and that's obviously not the case.
No.
So yeah. I can understand where that could get annoying and that could get tiring of people assuming that because assuming they don't look like the picture they have in their head of somebody who's a 200 plus average bowler.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they think as it like, oh, everyone just, they picked it up and do it for fun, instead of there's people out there that make like their life out of it.
Yeah. So as somebody who's just a part-time bowler like myself, whenever like I have like a birthday party or something, what's something that sets when you watch two people bowl, like a professional bowler or somebody who's just out there to have fun, like what's the biggest difference you see in between those types of people?
I would think just the level of seriousness. Obviously there's going to be a level of like difference of how good they are and whatever. But if you weren't looking like all that aside, like if you were just looking at somebody that did it for fun and somebody that didn't, because there's people in leagues, like I still bowl leagues, all the pro bowlers still bowl leagues, but a lot of them would just be like the seriousness. I mean, we all have fun, sometimes when we do it. When we bowl league, we try and have a lot more fun,
Hmm.
but you can just tell that they're using it as practice and trying, new things. They don't really care so much about their score that day because they're trying new things rather than the person that maybe down there is just throwing the ball down the lane and just, laughing and doing whatever. Like they're still going to be having fun, but they're using it as another day of practice and another time to practice. So you can kind of set that apart with just a normal someone that might be decent, but you can just tell that they don't do it for a living compared to somebody that's does it for a living, just because even if they are good at it, they might just be joking around that day. But then somebody that does wants to do it for a living or wants to, get better, they're using league as practice, I guess. I think that would be mostly just like the seriousness of it, I guess. Which
Yeah.
everyone can be serious, but you can just kind of tell. Obviously, with me being around the sport, I can just tell more. I think too. I think that's just also the eye for knowing. But you can even tell in league with people that like bowl a lot of tournaments and who just kind of go and bowl leagues. There's just people. It's just you can just tell by their like
Their
obviously
attitude.
better and who stuff. It's not just by like two. I think a lot of people look at score. I don't look at score when I look at somebody who can be good. You got to look at like what happens like before the line and like how they throw it. They might just not know enough about the game to score well yet, but they might throw it phenomenal. So I think that's kind of how you look at it too. So
that means I could be a good bowler because I probably bowl in the low 100s every time I go out. So, but I
yeah,
take
it's just
take
like
my
it,
time.
yeah, there's just like a lot of things to it. Like you could see somebody that's scores really well, but somebody would maybe they don't throw it the best, but then the person next to them could throw it a lot better than them. They're just not scoring because they're just not, in the right part of the lane or doing all that like complicated things. So it's just kind of things like that too that kind of set people apart, I believe. So
Cool. Okay. What in your mind do you think? What other sport, compares the most to bowling in your mind? When I think of it, I think of um, I'm a big golfer now, and so I think of it kind of like golf because it's just like a quick one shot type of thing, and there's probably so many things that are running through your mind. Would you say that's pretty comparable, or is there another sport that
yeah,
sticks?
I think golf too, and like I would probably say golf just because of the whole like you're not as active in either of them. Obviously, when you're actually doing the sport, obviously golfers, if you walk, that's a very long thing, and like there's a lot of like activity to bowling that you just don't really know unless you do it a lot. But I would think too, like with it's very similar in the sense of like when you're at a certain, you pick which golf club to use. Well, a bowler has to pick which bowling ball to use, and it depends on where you are in the on part of if are you on the green, are you teeing off, are you in the fair, like are you in the fairway, or there's different parts that you have to use. Same with bowling. Are you in this part of the lane? Is there a lot of oil? Is there not a lot of oil? It's those things. I think they're very big mental sports. I
Got
think they're probably two of the biggest mental sports games, as in like you have to constantly think of something every time. You're not just like going up there and hitting a ball. If you're doing it like if you're trying to like do it well. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, yeah, I could go to Top Golf and just say I'm gonna swing and hit a ball. But if you're gonna do it properly, and like I think that's like the biggest thing. Golf, there's people that just do it for fun. And then there's people that want to actually get better at it. And bowling is the same way. There's people that do it for fun. And then there's people that see it at a different level. So I think they're actually very comparable in that way.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's the two different. It can be a leisure sport and something just people do for fun and to get out and stay healthy. But then there's people like who take their time and have to think over, okay, I have to line up in this part of the lane and I want to put this much spin on it and I want to do this. So,
Yeah,
and it
exactly.
also like when you have a bad shot or like throw a bad ball, like trying to just get it out of your mind right away and think about the next one too is probably the biggest thing.
Yep. Yeah, and obviously with like golf, you have to too, the thing is like they're very similar and it's like when you hit it, if you hit it to the wrong part and you're behind a tree, you have to cover that up by trying making the best shot after. It's the same thing in bowling. If you leave like a split or you leave something, you have to try your best to get the pin count or make the spare. And then you have to forget about that and move on to the next frame. So it is very similar, I think, in that aspect of it.
Cool. Awesome. So I guess my final kind of question that I was thinking of is, so if you didn't bowl in college and if you never picked up a ball, what do you think you would be doing right now?
Um, I would probably say probably would have went to school for softball,
Okay.
just like I had said, because that was like I still didn't know in high school if I was going to go for that or bowling. So I probably would have done that. But it's a very good question because I definitely wouldn't be obviously coaching bowling. Who knows if I would have been coaching softball or whatever. Hopefully I would be just because I just love coaching. That's just like what I want to do. Um, but that's a hard question because like I live in the city still. I'll move back at the beginning of this or 2021. I'll be moving back into this Wisconsin area. But I don't think I would have been in Illinois or stayed in Chicago. Like I wouldn't have went to school in Chicago. So it is kind of crazy to just think about that because you don't
Hmm.
really know where life would be. It would probably be completely different. I might not
Yeah.
even be living in the state, not be live. But I probably would still have the degree I have, something with athletics. But you don't know because I've had coaching right out of school. I'd had it. So that is interesting. I really don't know where I guess I would
Yeah,
be. But I'm glad I don't have to find that out because I'm
that's true. Yeah.
so
It's good that you knew all along that, like, hey, coaching, no matter what sport, I'm going to
yeah.
be out there coaching. That's cool.
Yeah, because I went to school for it, and I originally actually thought that I would just coach at like a high school and maybe help bowling or softball, just because I still I still play softball. Obviously, I play slow pitch, but so I figured I would just do one of them, and then I didn't really think it would take off this quick. So again, very happy that I am kind of where I'm at, so I don't have to worry as much. Like it's nice to kind of have life figured out slowly, as at a young age, rather than having to be like, I have no idea what I want to do. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of where I honestly, if I didn't have bowling, I think that's probably where I would be. I'd probably be in that like 23, 24-year-old stage where it is like, what do I want to do? Because I
Yep.
know that happens to a lot of people, and I probably would be in that like area of kind of just like you have a job, but is it really what you want to do type
Yeah.
deal. So I think that's probably where I would be in that like,
Something to make ends meet.
yep, but not probably exactly what I want to do for a lifetime.
Cool. Well, we're glad you made the decision to stick to being a bowling coach, and we're glad you made the choice to come here to Carroll. So, do you have any other final comments or things?
No, I don't think I do.
Cool.
Know any
Well,
bowlers? Let me know so we can
all
sign them
right.
up.
All right. I'll keep my eye out. All right. Thanks for joining us tonight, Courtney.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Go Pios.